All right, Majin Trunks, episode 4. Android 18 is on the run. Y'all gonna laugh at the title I would use when I upload it to YouTube. Anyway, Gohan hovered in the air, his single arm still shaking from firing the special beam cannon. His chest heaved with exertion. The strain of using such a powerful technique in his weakened state was evident on his face. Despite the pain and fatigue, he couldn't help but feel a surge of relief at seeing Trunks alive and standing over the lifeless body of Android 17. The sight of the android's broken form brought a grim satisfaction. Finally, one of the machines that had terrorized their world for so long was deceased. But as Gohan's eyes shifted to Trunks, his relief was quickly overshadowed by a growing concern. The energy radiating from Trunks was unlike anything Gohan had ever felt from him before. It was powerful, yes, but it was also extremely dark, almost suffocating in its intensity. The golden aura of a Super Saiyan was there, but it was tainted, crackling with black lightning that seemed to warp the air that was around him. Trunks' grin was wide, but it lacked the warmth, adolescent determination Gohan had always associated with his protege. Instead, it was cold, almost predatory, and it sent a chill down Gohan's spine. Trunks, Gohan began, his voice cautious, as he descended to his apprentice. What happened to you? Your energy, it feels different. He kept his distance, his instincts warning him that something was very wrong with his student. The Trunks he knew was a beacon of hope, a warrior who fought for the future of their world, but the Trunks that was standing before him now felt like someone else entirely. Trunks grinned, and it even widened as he saw the concern etched across Gohan's face. He could feel the unease radiating from his mentor, and it amused him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Relax, Gohan, he said, his voice calm, but laced with an undercurrent of something Gohan couldn't quite place. I'm fine. In fact, I've never felt better. He stretched his arms, his muscles ripping with power as his aura flared slightly. The dark energy around him seemed to pulse in response, as if it were alive and feeding off his emotions. You should have seen me earlier, Trunks continued, his tone almost boastful. I was about to crush 17 before you showed up. That bastard thought he could take me down, but he didn't stand a chance. Trunks' eyes gleamed with a strange light as he spoke, his words filled with confidence that bordered on arrogance. Gohan had always known Trunks to be strong-willed, determined, but peaceable. But this was different. This was a savageness in his demeanor, a lack of empathy in his demeanor that made Gohan's stomach churn. Trunks, Gohan said carefully, taking a step closer. I'm just glad you're okay. But something's not right. Your energy is dark. It's like you've been corrupted by something. Trunks chuckled, the sound low and devoid of real humor. Corrupted? No, Gohan, I've been empowered. I finally have the strength to do what needs to be done. No more running. No more losing. Now the androids are running from me. And then he looked at 17's corpse, and one of them ran out of time. His eyes scanned the ruined city, his senses on high alert. Android 18 was still out there, and if she had any sense of self-preservation, she would be regrouping or planning her next move. Gohan couldn't afford to let his guard down, not when they were so close to ending the android's reign of terror once and for all. So he looked at Trunks. Trunks, Gohan said, his voice firm but gentle. We gotta stay focused. Android 18 is still out there, and we can't let her get away. If we work together, we can end this today. Trunks' grin didn't falter, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Don't worry, Gohan, Trunks said, his tone almost dismissive. I'll handle her. You've done enough already. Gohan frowned, his concern was growing. Trunks, this isn't the time to go off on your own. We need to stick together. Android 18 is dangerous, and if she's desperate, she'll do anything to survive. But Trunks was already turning away, his aura flaring as he prepared to take off. I'll be fine, Gohan, he said over his shoulder. You just focus on staying alive, and I'll take care of the rest. Without waiting for a response, Trunks shot into the air, his golden aura streaking through the sky as he flew in the direction of Android 18, where she had fled. Gohan watched him go, his heart heavy with worry. He wanted to follow to make sure Trunks didn't do something reckless, but maybe splitting up was their best chance of finding Android 18 anyways, before she could get the chance to escape. As Trunks disappeared into the distance, Gohan took a deep breath. Steadying himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong with Trunks. But he pushed the thought aside for now. There would be time to address it later. For now, Gohan focused on the task at hand. He blasted off into the opposite direction, knowing that the city was vast, and the ruins provided countless hiding places, but Gohan was determined to find her. Meanwhile, Trunks flew through the city, his eyes scanning the ground below, looking for any anomaly because he couldn't sense the android's energy. His grin widened as he followed the trail, his mind filled with visions of what he would do when he found her. You can run, 18, Trunks muttered to himself, his voice low and filled with malice, but you can't hide, not from me. The hunt was on, and Trunks was confident that he would find her first. After all, he had the power now, the power to destroy the androids once and for all, and nothing was going to get in his way. Then we cut to Android 18, who was moving swiftly through the ruins, her footsteps light and deliberate as she navigated the maze of shattered buildings. She had no intention of staying in one place for too long, not with that lunatic Trunks on her trail. The moment she had broken free from the confrontation, she had doubled back. She left her footsteps, then she hovered above the air and she doubled back to throw Trunks off, changing her trajectory to throw off any potential pursuit. She knew Trunks would likely follow the initial direction she fled, especially when he saw her footsteps. So she had taken a sharp turn, weaving through the ruins until she was certain she was no longer in his area of sight. Her mechanical mind was calculating every move and step as she sought a place to regroup and plan her next course of action. The city was vast, and the ruins provided ample hiding spots, but she needed more than just temporary refuge. She needed a way to disappear completely, at least long enough to figure out how to deal with this new, terrifying demon version of Trunks. As she moved, her thoughts raced, but Android 18 clenched her fists. Her usual confidence was shaken, but not entirely broken. She wasn't ready to give up yet. She just needed time to think, to plan, and for that, she needed to stay hidden. Android 18's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, and she spotted a cluster of buildings that seemed less damaged than the rest. She remembered this area. This is where Android 17 was rounding up all the humans that were in his game called Cage the Rats that he was playing. A plan began to form in her mind. If she could blend in with the survivors, she could buy herself some more time. She approached the building cautiously, her movements silent and precise. The humans inside were huddled together, their faces pale with fear as they whispered among themselves. When Android 18 stepped into the room, their whispers turned to gasp, and a few of them screamed a little bit. She raised a hand, her expression cold and commanding. "Quiet," she hissed, her voice low but filled with menace. "If you want to live, you'll do exactly what I say." The humans fell silent, their eyes wide with terror as they stared at her. Android 18's lips curled into a smirk. "Good. Now here's the deal. I'm going to stay here for a while, and you're going to keep your mouth shut. If anyone comes looking for me, you tell them you haven't seen me. If you do that, I might just let you live. And if you don't..." She let the threat hang in the air, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the room. The humans nodded frantically, too terrified to even try to argue. Android 18 leaned against the wall, her arms crossed, as she kept a watchful eye on the entrance. She knew it was a risky move, but it was her best chance at staying hidden, at least for now. Gohan flew above the ruined city, his eyes scanning the landscape below. The destruction was overwhelming. Crumbled buildings, shattered streets, and the lingering smoke of countless battles. He clenched his fists, his heart heavy with the weight of everything the androids had done. But now wasn't the time to dwell on the past. He needed to find Android 18 so he could finish her off. As he flew, Gohan's thoughts turned to the survivors. He knew that there were people still hiding in these ruins. He could sense them, trying to survive the world that had been torn apart. His empathy for them tugged at his heart, and he decided to check on them. If nothing else, he could offer them some assistance, and maybe, just maybe, they might have seen where Android 18 had ran off to. So he descended toward a cluster of buildings where he sensed the most life signatures. The area was relatively intact compared to the rest of the city, and Gohan hoped that meant the survivors here had managed to avoid the worst of the android's destruction. As he approached, he could hear faint whispers and the sound of movement. Unbeknownst to Gohan, his decision to check on the survivors would lead him straight to the last remaining android. Gohan landed softly outside the building, his presence immediately drawing the attention of the humans inside. He stepped through the doorway, his expression calm and reassuring. "Is everyone okay in here?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. The survivors turned to him, their faces lighting up with a mix of relief and awe. "It's him," one of them whispered. The Golden Warrior. Gohan blinked, surprised by the reaction. He had never thought of himself as famous. He had simply been doing what he could to protect the people of the earth, like his father would have wanted. But as the survivors crowded around him, their gratitude and admiration were undeniable. "You're the one who's been fighting those androids for all these years," an older man said, his voice filled with reverence. "We've heard stories about you. You're a real hero." Gohan shook his head modestly. "I'm just doing what I can to help," he said. "But right now I need to find the last android. Have any of you seen her?" The room fell silent. The survivors exchanged nervous glances. Gohan's sharp eyes noticed a shift in their demeanor, and he frowned. "If you know something, please tell me. It's important." Gohan's expression hardened as he could tell Android 18 was probably somewhere in this building, based on the tension that was in the air. Then we cut back to Trunks, who was getting more frustrated by the second. Trunks hovered above the ruined city, his golden hair flickering as his frustration grew. He had been searching for what felt like hours, flying in every direction, but there was no sign of this damn android. The metallic blonde had seemingly vanished into thin air, and it was driving him mad. His fist clenched as he scanned the horizon, his sharp eyes darting from one crumbling building to the next. "Where are you hiding, you coward?" Trunks muttered under his breath, his voice low and filled with venom. He had been so close to ending both of those androids, and now she was slipping through his fingers. The thought of her escaping to continue to wreak havoc on the world filled him with even more anger, burning rage at this point. He landed on the roof of a half-destroyed building, his boots crunching against broken concrete. His mind raced as he tried to think of where she could have gone. This city was vast, and the ruins provided a crazy amount of hiding spots. So she could be anywhere, underground, in a hidden bunker, or even blending in with the survivors. The idea of her hiding among the humans made his blood boil. No way she would do that. If she thought she could escape by using innocent people as a shield, maybe she could. But he doubted it. The androids didn't like the humans. And the humans probably would have screamed if they saw her. Trunks' eyes narrowed as he stared out the horizon. "You can't hide from me forever, 18, he said, his voice deadly serious. "Even if I have to tear this city apart, I'm going to find you." Then we dropped to another location that was deep within the bowels of a ship. Babidi watched the scene unfold through his crystal ball. The sorcerer's beady eyes gleamed with amusement as he observed Trunks getting more and more frustrated. This boy was powerful, and his impulses were something that Babidi could exploit. And with the wave of his hand, Babidi focused his magic, sending a vision directly into Trunks' mind. The image was clear and vivid, a cluster of buildings on the outskirts of the city, where a group of survivors huddled together. Among them, hidden in the shadows, was none other than Android 18. Trunks' eyes widened as the vision flashed before him. He recognized the area immediately. It was the same place where he had last seen the survivors, in that area. A grin spread across his face as he realized what had happened. "Thanks for the tip," Trunks said aloud, though he knew Babidi couldn't hear him. Or he didn't know if Babidi could hear him, but he could. Without hesitation, he shot into the air, his golden aura blazing as he made a sharp U-turn and headed straight to their location. Babidi chuckled darkly as he watched Trunks fly off. "That's it, boy," he said, his voice filled with glee. "Fight, destroy, and feed my cocoon with your rage. The more energy you expend, the sooner Majin Buu will awaken." Gohan stood in the center of the room, his single arm extended as he helped the survivors move a large piece of debris. The humans worked quietly and quickly, their faces filled with gratitude as they thanked him for his help. But despite their relief, Gohan couldn't shake the presence he felt earlier in the tension shift. The survivors were tense, their eyes darting nervously toward a shadowy corner of the room. Gohan's sharp instincts picked up their unease, and he followed their gaze, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the area. "I'll ask again, is everything okay?" Gohan asked, his voice calm but firm. The survivors hesitated, their nervous glances growing more pronounced. Gohan's suspicion deepened. He had seen this behavior before. People were too afraid to speak, too afraid to reveal the truth. "You don't have to be afraid," Gohan said, his tone gentle but reassuring. "If there's something or someone here, you can tell me. I'll protect you." The survivors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. Gohan's eyes narrowed as he turned his attention back to a shadowy corner. "Android 18, Gohan said under his breath, his voice filled with low and filled with determination. I know you're here. Gohan's voice echoed through the room, strong and unwavering. I never thought I'd see the day when you machines would be hiding from me, he said, his tone laced with a mix of disbelief and mockery. After all these years of terrorizing this world, you're reduced to skulking in the shadows like rats. How the mighty have fallen. The survivors froze, their eyes wide with fear as they glanced toward the corner of the room. Gohan's gaze followed theirs, his expression hardening as he waited for a response. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a cold, mocking laugh filled the air. Hiding? Please. Android 18's voice rang out, dripping with sarcasm. I was just taking a break. But if you're so eager to die, Golden Warrior, I'll be happy to oblige. From the shadows, Android 18 stepped forward, her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. Her blonde hair gleamed in the dim light, and her eyes burned with a mix of defiance and amusement. The survivors backed away. Their fear was palpable on their face. Gohan stood his ground, though, his single arm raised in a defensive stance. This ends now, 18, he said, his voice steady and filled with resolve. No more running. No more hiding. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. Consider this payment for what you've done. Android 18's smirk widened. Big words from her one-armed has-been, she said, her tone mocking. But if you're so eager to fight, let's see if you can back them up. The tension in the room was thick as the two faced off. The survivors watching in terrified silence. Gohan's eyes never wavered as he prepared to battle the android, the last of the androids. Gohan and Android 18 stepped outside, the ruined city stretching out around them as they prepared to face off. The air was thick with tension, the weight of years of conflict and destruction hanging between them. Gohan stood tall, his single arm raised in a defensive stance, his eyes locked onto Android 18 with unwavering determination. This ends now, 18, Gohan said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. No more games, no more running, and this time your brother won't be here to jump in and save you. The mention of Android 17 struck a nerve. Android 18's smirk faltered for a second. Her eyes narrowed and a flicker of anger came across her face. Don't you dare talk about him, she snapped, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. Before Gohan could respond, Android 18 lunged at him, her movements fueled by a mix of anger and desperation. She closed the distance between them in an instant, her fists aimed straight at Gohan's face. Gohan barely had time to react. He raised his arm to block the blow, and the force of her attack sent him skidding backwards. You think you can just waltz in here and act like you've won? Not too long ago, we put you out of commission and took your arm from you, Android 18 shouted, her voice filled with pure venom. And one arm makes you even more or less of a man, Gohan. And you're nothing compared to us. Gohan gritted his teeth, his feet digging into the ground as he steadied himself. Maybe, he said, his voice calm but firm. But I only needed one arm to put one of you down. The battle between Gohan and Android 18 was a whirlwind of motion. Their movements so fast that they were little more than blurs to the untrained eye. The ruined street around them became their battlefield. Rubble and debris was flying into the air with every clash of their fist and or kick. Android 18 was definitely stronger. Her mechanical enhancements gave her the edge and raw power. But Gohan was more tactical. His years of experience and training allowing him to anticipate her moves and counter them with precision. He dodged her strikes with fluid movements, his single arm blocking and parrying her attacks as he looked for openings to counterattack. You're predictable, 18, Gohan said, his voice calm but laced with determination. All that power means nothing if you can't land a solid hit. Android 18 growled, her frustration mounting as she launched a flurry of punches and kicks. Each attack was met with a swift counter from Gohan, his movements calculated and deliberate. He knew he couldn't match her strength, but he didn't have to. He didn't need to. All he needed was one good shot. The ground beneath them crackled and splintered as their battle raged on, the force of their blows sending shockwaves through the ruined city. Android 18's attacks were relentless, but Gohan held his ground, his focus unwavering as he waited for the perfect moment to strike. As the battle continued, Gohan began to notice something unusual. Android 18's attacks, while still powerful, were steadily getting sloppier by the moment. It was as if her focus was elsewhere. Her mind was clouded by something other than the fight that was at hand. Gohan's sharp eye caught subtle signs. The way her punches were slightly off target, the way her kicks lacked the usual precision. It didn't take long for him to figure out the reason, too. Android 18 was distracted because her emotions were getting the better of her. "You're thinking about him, aren't you?" Gohan said, his voice low but filled with understanding. "About 17. Android 18's eyes widened for a split second before she mastered her reaction with a glare. "Shut up," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "You don't know anything about me." But Gohan could see the truth in her eyes. The loss of her brother had shaken her, whether she wanted to admit it or not, and this distraction would make her vulnerable. So Gohan pressed on. "Consider it karma for all the siblings you machines have killed over these years," Gohan said, his voice sharp and serious. Android 18's response was a furious scream as she launched herself at Gohan, her attacks growing even more erratic. But Gohan remained calm, his movements precise as he dodged and countered her strikes. Gohan saw his opportunity and took it. As Android 18 lunged at him with a wild punch, he sidestepped the attack with ease, his movements fluid and precise. Her fists sailed past him, leaving her wide open for his counterblast. Without hesitation, Gohan raised his hand, energy crackling around his fingertips as he unleashed a one-armed Kamehameha directly, and the blast struck Android 18 square in the chest. The force of the attack sent her flying backwards, to the point where she crashed into the side of a crumbling building. The impact sent a shower of debris falling down and around her. Gohan's energy wave had struck true, slamming Android 18 into the side of a crumbling building with enough force to bring the structure down on top of her. The ground shook as the buildings collapsed, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. Gohan stood amidst the chaos, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. He knew Android 18 would still be alive, but as much as he wanted to finish his fight, his body was reaching his limit because he wasn't fully recovered from his coma. The injuries he had sustained in his previous battles, combined with the strain of fighting with only one arm, had taken their toll. Gohan's vision blurred as his strength waned, his golden aura flickering before fading entirely. He dropped to one knee, his hand pressed against the ground as he tried to steady himself. "Not yet," Gohan muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He wanted to keep going, to end the fight once and for all, but his body refused to cooperate. With a final labored breath, Gohan collapsed to the ground, momentarily unconscious, slipping from consciousness as well, until his world faded to black. The sound of a collapsing building echoed through the ruined city, and it drew Trunks' attention. Like a beacon, he flew toward the source of the noise, his golden aura blazing with dark energy. When he arrived, the sight that greeted him filled him with a mix of anger and concern. Gohan lay unconscious on the ground, his body battered and broken. The sight of his mentor in such a state ignited a fire within Trunks. His rage boiled over as the Majin influence tightened its grip on his mind. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light. The symbol of his forehead pulsed with dark energy, glowing red. "Gohan," Trunks muttered, his voice low and filled with fury. He knelt beside his mentor, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse. Relief washed over him when he felt the thrum of life, but it was quickly replaced by a burning desire for vengeance. Trunks stood, his gaze sweeping the area as he searched for Android 18. His senses were heightened, the dark energy within him amplifying his abilities. "You're not getting away," Trunks growled, his voice dripping with malice. "Not this time." Meanwhile, Android 18 was struggling to her feet amidst the rubble of a collapsed building. Her body ached, and her system strained from the force of Gohan's attack because of the previous battle she had already had with Trunks. Her sharp eyes scanned the area, searching for a way out. That's when she noticed it, a hidden entrance to an underground tunnel, partially obscured by debris. The survivors had likely missed this when they were moving around the debris because it was well hidden, but her sharp eyes could see it. "Perfect," she muttered, her voice weak but filled with determination. This was going to be her ticket out of here. Android 18 paused, her eyes narrowing as she tried to discern the source of tremors because she felt the ground shake. She didn't have time to figure out. She needed to move. With a final glance over her shoulder, she walked towards the tunnel in the building she had been in previously. Back above ground, Trunks' rage had reached a boiling point. The Majin influence had taken almost full control of his mind. His thoughts consumed by a single goal: find Android 18 and destroy her. By any means, he flew through the ruined city, his golden aura crackling with black lightning as he blasted at buildings indiscriminately. Each explosion sent shockwaves through the area. The ground trembled beneath his feet. Trunks didn't care about the destruction he was causing. He didn't care about who might be inside the buildings. All that mattered was him finding Android 18. "Where are you?" Trunks shouted, his voice filled with fury. He unleashed another energy blast, the attack reducing a nearby building to rubble. The dust and debris filled the air, but Trunks didn't stop. He continued his rampage, his movements fueled with pure hatred. The Majin symbol on his forehead was glowing brighter with each passing moment. The dark energy within him was growing stronger. Trunks was no longer the hopeful warrior fighting for justice. He was just a force of destruction, consumed by a lust for revenge, and he couldn't stop until Android 18 was dead at his feet. The ground continued to shake violently as Trunks' energy blast rattled the buildings, sending tremors through the underground tunnels. The survivors huddled together, their faces pale and filled with fear as they whispered amongst themselves. "Is this an earthquake?" one of them asked, their voice trembling. Android 18 leaned against the wall for support, and she shook her head. "No," she said, her voice weak but firm. "It's him. That lunatic Trunks. He's looking for me." The survivors' eyes widened in terror. They didn't know who Trunks was, but if an android was hiding from him, he was someone to be feared for sure. Android 18 watched him for a moment, her expression unreadable, for reasons even she couldn't fully explain. She felt a flicker of something as she looked at the crowd. Guilt, maybe, or pity. Then she spoke. "There's a tunnel," she said abruptly, pointing toward the hidden exit. "It leads out of the city. If you want to live, go through it now." The survivors hesitated, unsure whether to trust her, but as another explosion rocked the building, they didn't have a choice. They scrambled toward the tunnel, their movements frantic as they tried to escape. Android 18 watched them go, her lips curling into a faint smirk. But before the last wave of the survivors could disappear into the tunnel, the roof above them exploded. Debris rained down as Trunks descended, his golden aura crackling with dark energy. His eyes locked onto Android 18, and a sinister smile spread across his face. "Found you," he said, his voice low and filled with malice. He raised his hand, energy crackling around his fingertips as he prepared to unleash a devastating blast. Trunks' mind was consumed by a single thought: destroy Android 18. The Majin influence had taken full control. His rage and hatred was blinding him to everything that was around him. He didn't see the survivors huddled in the corner. He didn't see their faces filled with terror. He didn't care about the destruction he was causing or the lives he was putting at risk. All that mattered was blasting Android 18 away here and now. His eyes narrowed as he focused on her, his vision tunneling until she was the only thing he could see. The energy in his hand grew brighter, the air around him crackling with power. "This is for everything you've done," Trunks said, his voice cold and filled with venom. "For Gohan, for my father, for my world, for me." Android 18 stared up at him, her expression defiant but tinged with fear. She knew she was cooked, but she refused to back down. "Do it then," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "But don't think for a second that this is going to make you any better than us." As she looked back at the crowd of people that were behind her, Trunks' grin widened, his fingers glowing brighter. But before he could fire, a sudden force slammed into him, sending him crashing into a nearby building. Trunks groaned as he pulled himself out of the rubble, his eyes blazing with fury. He looked up, ready to attack whoever had interrupted him, but his anger turned to shock when he saw who it was. Gohan stood there after having regained consciousness from all the commotion. He stood in the center of the room with his single arm raised, his expression filled with a mix of determination and disappointment. His breathing was labored, his body still weak from his injuries, but he refused to back down. "Trunks, stop," Gohan shouted, his voice firm but filled with concern. There are innocent people in this building. You can't just blow it up. Trunks' shock quickly turned to rage, his golden aura flaring as he stepped forward. Stay out of this, Gohan, he snapped, his voice trembling with anger. She deserves to die. They shouldn't have gotten in my way if they didn't want to die with her. Gohan's eyes narrowed as he faced his protege. This isn't you, Trunks, he said, his voice calm but firm. I don't know what's happened to you, but this isn't the way. You're better than this. Trunks clenched his fist, the dark energy around him growing stronger. You don't understand, he said, his voice low and filled with venom. This power, it's the only way to stop them, the only way to make them truly pay. And some things have to be sacrificed to achieve the goal. That goal. Gohan shook his head, his expression filled with sadness. No, Trunks, this isn't power. This is destruction. If you're going to keep going down this path, you'll lose yourself completely and probably become just like these damn androids. The two stood facing each other, the tension between them palpable. Android 18 watched from the sidelines, their expression unreadable. The survivors huddled in the corner, their eyes wide with fear as they waited to see what would happen next. The student was about to challenge his master. And I'm going to end it right there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Go!